Welcome back to 40 Days Closer. It's your host, Josh Legg, and co-host.
Max Angle.
On today's episode, we're doing something. We brought on a special guest here. We got Jeremy. As you can see, he's got his garments on. He's currently in the seminary, about to become a priest. So we thought, it'd be awesome to get his viewpoints and really his journey throughout college. So thanks for coming on, Jeremy.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's good to see your face again. A little bit about Jeremy. So you graduated in 2014, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And so he was a guy that me and Max always looked up to, just being an older kid, being a role model at Everest. So yeah, it's great to see another familiar face.
Yeah. And honestly, it's awesome for me to see you guys doing this program. I mean, I know I've told you both this before, but yeah, I'm just really inspired to see that you guys had the courage to do this. I was so especially moved when I saw the first episode of the podcast come out, just because I think one of the greatest lies that people in our generation believe is that they're alone. They're the only ones that even have a desire to maybe try and live out the faith. And that feeling of being alone is fatal. And so for people to see something like this and realize, hey, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that, still cares about my faith a little bit. I think that's just so important for people. So I'm really so much props to you guys. Can't say that enough.
Thank you. And now that you mentioned that, that's why, we really wanted to start getting something going, because a lot of college people do feel like I'm literally going by this alone. So it's so easy for them to fall out of that lifestyle. So I think it's important, like you said, to definitely see just people talking about the faith, and just like Father Thomas said, just like we're just instruments, and God is just using us to reach other people's hearts.
Yeah, Jeremy, I like the point that you brought up that I don't think anyone has brought up yet in any of the episodes, was like how fatal being alone can be in your views, especially with faith. Because I know people have like if you try to live out your faith alone, it's like you just kind of like it just weeds out, and you just slowly kind of burn out because there's no one else to support you. So I feel like that's a very important thing, especially now when the world's kind of looking at Catholics and looking at Christians and saying that's not how you're supposed to live life. So I just want to also applaud you on you're kind of like the ultimate example of living your faith. It's really nice seeing you doing all this and going to seminary and just being on fire with your faith. So I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. It never gets old to hear that, honestly, because I remember when I first started to kind of open up a little bit and tell people that I wanted to be a priest. I was terrified. I was so afraid that everyone was just going to think I was weird. And I mean, even to this day, to hear affirmation of that is still so good. And I really take that as honestly God speaking through you, because I need that affirmation. It's tough, man. Yeah.
So if you wanted to start maybe talking about your journey after Everest, and just that college experience that you got, and just how it's taking you to the life you're living right now.
Yeah. So after Everest, I went to Franciscan University of Steubenville. And obviously it's a very, very Catholic environment there. And so, I guess being alone in the faith is one thing I was never actually in danger of there, because there is such a strong Catholic atmosphere. But, that's not to say that there still weren't spiritual struggles. It was still a place where I was really encouraged by my peers and professors and the friars there to grow in the faith. But growing in the faith is still going to be a struggle, no matter what. And so there still were some universal aspects that I think, some of the same struggles that I went through that everyone would go through. I think one of the things that I figured out pretty early in college, because I remember at the end of my freshman fall semester, like Steubenville was a great place. But I remembered thinking, like, you know what, if I just look back at this one past semester, and if I were to multiply by 8 to add up to my total college experience, then I would be very unsatisfied with that. Like it was still good, but like there's more.
Okay.
And honestly, that was kind of a soul searching moment for me. I just felt like, I had showed up and just kind of expected it to be awesome, and then it just didn't just hand itself to me that way. And um, that was really something that I honestly took to prayer a lot, and really kind of put that before God, and kind of actually, what am I doing wrong?
So it sounds like you kind of noticed that freshman year that you're expecting
Sorry, hang on a
something
second.
like.
Hey, it's not a good time. Freshman year, end of the first semester, I was feeling like there was something more that I was missing, and I was talking about taking that to prayer, and then you started asking a question.
Yeah. So your freshman year, what was it? So you kind of noticed you weren't really fulfilling what God wanted for you, correct? So you kind of were started praying about what do I need to change? What road do I need to really go down? That type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you want
Yeah,
to,
actually, sort of one of the conclusions I came to, it's something that reminds me a lot of something you said, Josh, in the first episode of this podcast. You talked about the importance of staying busy. I think a similar thing occurred to me where I realized that I was just generally kind of unmotivated. I was kind of like lollygagging through my day, getting up late, playing video games, watching TV, I was kind of just like wandering from pleasure to pleasure aimlessly.
gotcha.
And I remember kind of making a rule for myself, like before 4 o'clock p.m., be productive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sure, have a little
Yeah.
downtime in the afternoon, evening, but like man, when you get out of bed, like get after it,
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
that was
Attack
one
the
thing.
day.
Yeah, carpe diem, seize the day. And so that was one thing that I really tried to embrace in the second semester. And honestly, I'd say stuff kind of started to turn around for me because Franciscan was a place where there was a ton of really great opportunities put before me in terms of classes and people.
Uh-huh.
And I really did start to try and take advantage. And I don't know, all of a sudden my education came alive. I felt like I was learning so much about what it meant to be a human, to be a Catholic. And I really started trying to, live that stuff out. And met with some failures and successes, but the more there was kind of an avalanche effect. It was like the more effort I put in, the more good stuff happened, the more effort I wanted to put in, and then the more good
Gotcha.
stuff.
I'm sure the better you felt as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that just
So
like I'm sorry, Josh. I just was gonna say,
Go on.
was that would you attribute that to your prayer life? Would you say like your prayer life was deepening and getting better, and you kind of just realized more of the path that God wanted to lead you on, or I don't know, like what kind of motivated you and attributed to that success in finding that motivation in college?
yeah, I mean, I would say completely my prayer life. I mean, there were other things. I had some great professors and some great role models that were encouraging me, but um, I don't know. I prayer is where the magic happened for me. I was pretty committed to having at least 15 minutes of prayer every day in my life. And Franciscans are awesome in that they have perpetual adoration, and I was able to go and spend that time usually in front of the exposed Blessed Sacrament.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah, that was just kind of a place where I had to be real with myself,
Mm-hmm.
and it was sometimes tough to have to admit to God, like, hey, I felt like you motivated me to do this and I didn't do it. I failed. But a lot of times God was good and he would kind of pour consolation into my heart in those moments. Be like, hey, it's okay. You're still my beloved son.
Yeah.
And, just kind of having those sorts of moments. And I'd say I felt like me and God were in it together. And that was so huge. Like it wasn't just me on this project of self-perfection by myself,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah,
That's,
I think sorry,
oh
you
yeah.
see
Go ahead.
sometimes with men, like they're living a sort of a bachelor lifestyle, and maybe sort of letting themselves go, but then they meet a girl and they straighten up their act, I think it was kind of like that. That's kind of the motivation that prayer can give you. You realize that
Okay.
like I have this relationship with God, and this is worth me, giving more than just a slovenly version of myself into.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great
Oh.
connotation. That's awesome.
What
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I like how you brought up about how it was kind of you and God taking that journey. Because like for me, I think of Jesus as like my friend, and he's just like with me all the time and just like guiding me and through my life. So I thought that was really cool you brought that up, because that's how I picture Jesus and God. He's kind of just my buddy, and I can talk to him and go to him for help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's important, I feel like, especially when you're young and you're living your faith, to remember that God, he was human, he suffered, and he understands the suffering that we go through. And so
Mhm.
uniting that suffering to his heart especially is just a super important thing to do, because faith life is not a constant up or a constant down. It's both. A lot of people
Yeah.
think, oh, like when you're living your faith, it's all easy, and no, it's not at all. Jeremy can attest to that, I'm sure. There's a lot of challenges, and so the important part would just be uniting those challenges with God, and just making sure, you're always just saying, hey God, how can I better myself? And like, I need you to keep loving me.
Mhm.
Jeremy, I just had another question real quick. It was really about when you started noticing your call to the priesthood and God kind of inching you forward to accepting that call, and maybe some of the challenges and also some of the, good things that came from that.
Yeah. So the the initial idea has been in my mind for honestly since I was probably like 6 years old. Um,
Oh wow.
and I can tell you exactly how it got there. And it was watching the example of the priests at Everest,
Mm.
um, especially Father Gomez. And yeah, I don't know how many people will remember Father Alphonse, Father
Uh,
Rivas.
Father
Father Reed.
Rivas, I remember. Yep.
Yeah, and those were all guys that I just remember being a little kid and thinking, man, I want to be just like those guys.
Oh wow.
And that's just how it started for me. And yeah, honestly, I didn't even second guess it too much. I was kind of just assuming I was going to be a priest for most of my life. And it wasn't really until high school that I kind of started to, take it a little more seriously and be like, all right, well, I should really discern this and not just do it because I had the idea my whole life. I should really think
Yeah.
about this. The whole marriage and girls thing, that's not so bad either. So maybe I give that a second look.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and, yeah, I did go back and forth for probably like 2 years in high school, freshman and sophomore year. I really, yeah, I didn't know how to make that decision.
Hmm.
Um, and honestly, I would say there was a fear there. There was a fear that how can I make that call? Like I'm just a kid in high school. How do I have what it takes to make a
Hmm.
decision that's gonna affect my whole future like that?
Hmm.
And but anyways, the kind of the deciding moment came. I'd gone to a Steubenville conference. It was after my sophomore year of high school, and at the conference, they really encouraged us to go home with some kind of a resolution. And the resolution I took home with me was to really start praying about discernment and take that more seriously than I had before. And I did that. I tried to just sit down and ask God to reveal His will to me. And most of the time it didn't exactly go so well, but I stuck with it.
Hmm.
And right around the same time, kind of coincidentally, or I should say providentially, my mom just got me this little pamphlet that was called 10 Steps to Discerning the Priesthood. And I read through this thing. Actually, I was doing that in my prayer a little bit. I'd kind of read through this. And the biggest thing that struck me from that pamphlet was they emphasized that you can never make a decision out of fear. If you're going to make a decision like this, it has to be from a place of spiritual peace and tranquility. And if there's fear present in your heart, then you're not in the right frame of mind to make that decision.
Oh
And in
wow.
one sense, that gave me a lot of peace because it was like, all right, well, if I'm feeling afraid, then I don't need to worry about trying to make up my mind right here and now.
Mm.
Hmm.
Anyway, so I finished that booklet, and then right around that same time, I was at daily mass at Columbiere, And after mass, there was this little old lady that came up to me and she said, I know you're discerning the priesthood. I have a charism. I know you're discerning the priesthood, and I'm
Oh,
going to be
wow.
praying for you. And I was like, whew, okay, wow, that's intense. And I had actually walked out and I was in the car with my mom. And I said, stop, I need to go back and ask her a question. She stopped and I went back in the church and she was praying her rosary, with other little old ladies. And I just went and sat down next to her and I said, how many people have you done this for? And she was like, oh, several. And I was like, all right, how many of them became priests?
Oh man.
She was like, okay, look, that's not the point. The point is that I just want you to know that I'm praying for you. But most of them did become priests.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Shoot, man.
A real kick up the butt.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Funny.
And I remember thinking to myself, this is probably when I went from being maybe 50-50 to like 60-40 in favor of the priesthood. And I kind of had to, now I was like, God, this is totally a sign. There's no way I can say it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. Thing about signs is we all want them, but oftentimes if it's not the one that we wanted to be told to do, we're not as open to the sign as we might have thought.
Yeah, for sure.
But anyways, that was a big moment. Then just a few days after that, I was at youth group meeting at the Turbrack house, and we had been doing some praise and worship, and I was in a state of great spiritual peace, more so than normal, because even noticing that I was in peace didn't kind of like shatter the peace, which oftentimes it does. And so it was a strong place of peace. And there were a couple things that happened that night where there was a priest who was visiting, and he had just said a couple things to me. None of them were about the priesthood, but I just felt like he had, for some reason, gravitated towards me. And, I found that interesting. And
Yeah.
all of these different things that kind of came together in my life. And I felt like in this moment, I was sort of in God's crosshairs, or it was just like, gosh, there's just been so much about the priesthood recently. And here I was in this place of peace, and the book had really emphasized that that's so important. And so I just kind of remember thinking, like, I have everything I need if I wanted to make up my mind right now. And then there was just this strong affirmation. And I would say it was from God, a strong affirmation. Yes, you have everything you need. And that fear that I had of not being adequately equipped to make the decision, God just spoke directly into it and said, you have what you need.
Wow.
And you can say yes right now if you want to. And I actually had to pull myself out of the room everyone was in. I just kind of went into the kitchen by myself. And after a little while, it just kind of came out of me. The yes just sort of came out, and I said it, and I realized I'd said it, and I realized that I couldn't take it back. And not that I wanted to, but it was like, shoot, did I just do that? I guess I did.
Yeah. Full go now.
Yeah. And there I was. So.
That's
and
awesome.
Here you are. It worked out. That's an awesome story, Jeremy. We really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, thanks.
Like you said, I'm sure at the beginning it had to be tough going out like, oh yeah, I'm joining the priesthood, just because you're kind of scared about who to tell it to and kind of like this and that. But it's really cool that you're doing that and you're just going full out for it. Especially for me, it's really cool to see because me and Max, like I said earlier, we really looked up to you, and it's just really cool to see. Max, did you have the Bible verse for this week?
Yeah. So this week it is from the book of Galatians, chapter 2, verse 20, which says, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me.
Wow.
So yeah, I kind of connected with that verse, really just because it's about a unification of your body and your heart to God's, and how much that can really bless someone. Kind of just uniting your suffering, especially. So that's what really stood out for me in that verse.
Yeah, it looks like it's just full body, full mind, full spirit, just all to God. Just give everything up to Him. That's what it sounds like to me, And like it said, God is like just working through you, and just if you give your life to God, it'll be an awesome life.
Yeah, Jeremy, you have anything to say about that verse?
I love St. Paul's realism in that verse, because he says, I have died with Christ, and it's not me who lives, but it's Christ who lives in me. And he's not speaking metaphorically. He doesn't mean that metaphorically in the slightest. It's not a nice image. He thinks that there's some way in which I can really truly say, because I was baptized, I died with Christ, and he is alive in me. And there's something in me that he put to death. And I think that's just such a powerful verse to kind of hold up as a test for our faith. How seriously do we take that? How seriously do we take the sacraments and the realities there, that because, especially baptism, but that's also renewed every time we receive the Eucharist, how seriously do we take that Christ entered into us in a very real sense, put our sinfulness to death, and that he is alive in us and he's empowering us to live this new life in the Spirit? And, is that a power that we seek to access? Is that a faith that we can make the bedrock of our life?
Wow.
Yeah, so really giving yourself to God. That's awesome. I think we're running out of time. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. It's great to see a familiar face and hear from your story.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Yeah, and so great to be on. Thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure.
No problem, Jeremy.
All righty. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and we'll see you in a couple days. All right. See you guys.